Well, welcome, Mr. Jackier. So happy to have you on. Um,
And I'm so glad to be here. How are you, Ann?
Excellent, excellent. It's been a long time since I have had you on the show, but you were on the regular Life Outside the Box show. You started another show, and boy, we go way back with all this.
Yes, I'm always starting shows. I never seem to finish them, though.
Well, I think you're the most recent thing though with the fantasy football comparison to your business and starting the program, the fantasy business is very exciting. And
Yeah,
I'm
we
so
call
happy. I'm
we
happy
call
that
it. Go
I'm so
ahead.
happy that we're going to be talking about it today.
Yeah, no, we're calling it building your fantasy business. We're using the parallels and techniques of winning fantasy football and applying it to your business. And fantasy football is really a tool. First of all, there are so many football fans. And fantasy football has become a multi-billion-dollar industry. There are hundreds of thousands of leagues all over the country and all over the world for that matter. And people actually make their living doing this seasonally. There are people that do this professionally.
That is
And
amazing.
it really, well, the NFL is an interesting thing. There's a lot of good, there's a lot of things to criticize, but everything they touch really seems to work. I mean, in April, there's a big show when the schedule comes out. I mean, and this is before the draft even, and everybody's glued to that. So it's become a big deal. And I have played for about 13 years. It started as a hobby with a bunch of guys I went to high school with,
Uh-huh.
and they needed an extra body because one of our mutual friends dropped out. They needed somebody to take over the team. I knew nothing about it. So I played. Had a reasonably good first year. Didn't quite make the playoffs, but hung in there. The second year, I was in the championship game. I probably had the best team. I remember I had Brady in his prime. I had Gronkowski. I remember I had LaShawn McCoy. So it tells you how long ago this was. But I lost the championship game. And then I didn't sniff anything for about 5 years. I literally became the worst player in the league. And I lost games, and I lost games in ways you can't begin to believe. Okay, I lost a game because the quarterback slid back an extra half yard in a victory formation, and I lost a point for that, which cost me a game.
Interesting.
That's how ridiculous this got.
Okay, so many people watching this know that you and I have been coaches in the business world for many years. And we also are very transparent when we admit, just like you did on this last fantasy game when you said, I lost in ways you can never imagine. We know
No, it's true.
how that goes.
Well, and the funny thing is, again, there are many parallels between fantasy football and running a fantasy football team and running a successful business. Now, at the height of my, as I said, the losing got old. I mean, it just was, and I'm talking about 3-10, 2-11, totally non-competitive.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to give it one more shot and really, again, figure out what I could do to at least make a playoff run. And I made 2 years of a playoff run pretty well, but I made the playoffs, but was a non-factor.
Mm-hmm.
I then decided to try and do a little bit more homework, take everything to the next level, and I won my league.
And how
And
did you
then
do that? What were the changes that you made from what you did prior to that?
a lot of it had to do with being a little bit more involved in what went on during the week.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is paying attention not only to my team and its needs, but also seeing what was going on around the league. And when I say the league, I don't just mean my fantasy league. I also mean the NFL.
So when you think about that and you think about the parallels between that and business, when and you think, okay, who are my players in my business that I want on my team? That's one big parallel.
Well, sure, it's a draft. All these leagues have their annual drafts, and it literally is just like the NFL draft. You literally are picking players.
Mm-hmm.
In business, in a lot of cases, of course, you have employees. So in a sense, you are picking your players.
And
Now,
sometimes you're happy.
it depends on the day. Now, by the way, even if you're an entrepreneur or you work in a solo capacity, you still are picking your team because you're still trying to build your client base. You're still working with vendors. You should have a lawyer or an accountant on speed dial at all times.
Exactly. You should
And it's
always have your great team.
absolutely so. The first step in fantasy football is team building. So you have to have the right team in order to compete. And that's step one. And part of it all, part of what I did was paying attention to not only the draft itself, but I started studying offenses in football. Who are the teams that score the most points? Because the obvious agenda with fantasy football is each week to score more points than your opponent. That's how you win. If you do that, you win. If you don't, you lose. It really is as simple as that. So with that, you start looking at offenses, and I developed some theories and philosophies that are interesting that I also think apply to business. And again, I'm talking about winning. I'm talking about becoming as successful as you can possibly be. I'm not talking necessarily about middle of the road.
Well,
And
exactly. It's what do you do each day, each week, each month, each quarter, each year to be successful in whatever business that you find yourself in.
right. And much like anything else, it's a day by day process. 99.5% of the time, success is built every single day, every single week, every single, month, year, you name it. And I want to encourage our listeners for one thing also. Every business has its strengths and weaknesses. Google and Amazon have their strengths and weaknesses. I mean, money may not be one of them, but there are strengths and weaknesses within their companies, within their businesses that they're still dealing with. I guarantee you that. So,
Absolutely.
so no one is immune to these types of issues. Absolutely nobody. So be encouraged. And the other thing to be encouraged about, and this is really where I think the course can be of help, you can always get better day in and day out. It doesn't necessarily matter where you are now, but it's where you want to be. So now I'll give you an example. One of the first things we're going to cover in this course is, where do you want to be? Because if you don't necessarily know where you want to be within a certain time frame, you're never going to get there. And the time frame is crucial. Now, in a fantasy football season, where do you want to be? The answer is in the winner's circle at the end of the year.
Exactly.
You get the trophy. You also you can make a significant amount of money. I mean, we play for peanuts, in my league. And I'm actually in a new league this year because my old league, unfortunately, fell on hard times and it's gone. But we play for very little money, but you still want to win, you still want to collect, and you don't want to have to pay out. So the first thing you've got to determine is what your goal is. My goal especially now since I've won it twice, is I want to try and win it every year. I know I can't, but I want to try. My goal is to be certainly in the playoffs every year, but the goal is to win it. And I actually I got the idea for the course. I was actually talking to Jack Canfield about this. Originally, I was thinking about writing a book about my fantasy football adventures. And he said, first of all, he said, it's something I'd read. He said, but secondly, it really is an interesting concept because there are so many football fans.
Exactly.
So that, I mean, Sunday there are games, and also if you're a college fan, there are games from Thursday through Monday. So it's an everyday occurrence, and much again like business, every day there's something to do in fantasy football. But anyway, goal number one is to figure out where you want to be. That is number one.
Well, it's interesting because how many people do you know that are in a business that they're not necessarily loving?
The trouble becomes, and I've been a victim of this too, as you well know. You get so bogged down with the daily minutia of what you have to do that before you turn around, you're actually not running your business.
You're working in your business and not on your business.
Exactly right. What happens is you start trying to survive every day instead of building. And all you've really done is you've traded a job for another job, where not
Right.
only are you are, and this is a misconception. Everybody thinks that once they become their own boss, the world gets great.
We can disavow people of that. There are
Well,
lots of advantages to entrepreneurship, but there's a lot that goes along with it that people don't necessarily consider. Like you're
well,
not working for just one boss, you're working for literally hundreds sometimes.
and not only that though, the only thing you really gain control of when you start your own business is your time,
Mm-hmm.
which is a key element because you're not responsible, you're not answering to somebody for time. That said, what you're trading for that time is all the responsibility, every bit of it.
It's true. It's true. I
And
mean, you can walk into an office 40 hours a week or have, a role with a corporation. And at the end of the day, you can turn off your computer and you can say, I'm done. I put my work in. And you get paid days off, you get insurance, and that's all lovely. But when you step into the entrepreneurship role, that changes.
right now, by the way, make no mistake, neither of us are encouraging not going into the entrepreneurship
No,
role
no,
because
we love it, but you've got to go in with your eyes wide open.
absolutely, and this course will help you crystallize a lot of that. And again, I think the fun part is using the football analogies because there are so many football fans. Now, even if you're not a fantasy football player, this is still something you can benefit from. Because if you are a football fan, there are so many things you can draw from because there are models in place. Look at
Absolutely.
some of the most successful NFL franchises in the history of the league. I'll name some: the San Francisco 49ers, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the New England Patriots, of course. I didn't think we'd have to mention them, but we will anyway, because they've in fact they've earned that. Okay, there are many others. Now let's think about some teams that never seem to get it right, even when they do the right things. The Arizona Cardinals, the New York Jets, until very recently, the Detroit Lions and the Chicago Bears. These are teams that never, for whatever reason, they never wind up where they want to go.
Well, the Bears were in the Super Bowl in 85.
That's true, but they haven't gone near it since.
No, and it's interesting because,
And that's
as you
40
know, I
years. It's
used to
almost
live
40 years.
in that area, in the Chicago area, and my husband used to say that he would go to see the Bears lose in a different city every year.
Mm-hmm. Now, by the way, that 85 Bears team was one of the best teams you'll ever see in your life. That defense was incredible. That's
Yep.
still the most dominating defense I think I've ever seen. But again, I'm talking about sustained sustained excellence. And one of the great coaches in the history of the league, who was also one of the great organization builders in the league, was Bill Walsh. And he was the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers. And it turned out to be the perfect marriage of moribund team to brilliant, innovative coach who wanted to build an organization from the ground up. The 49ers were utterly miserable. Miserable. They were the worst organization in the league, full of them. You had new ownership in Eddie DeBartolo, and ownership matters in that league. Ownership matters in fantasy football, too. You have to do the right things. And the right things begin with ownership.
So
And
what if you have a business that is just abysmal in terms of organization, product line, anything you can think of, maybe the services that are offered, and you have to start from square one?
you see, and again, I'm going to draw a parallel to fantasy football as well. Because the answer is, if you're in that situation, you've got a problem. You also
probably have lots of problems.
Yes, you do. But you also, as the owner and the CEO, have to take a very cold, hard look at everything, starting with yourself. Now, by the way, one of the traps that you run into in business is you don't see everything clearly, or you play favorites with an employee, or you think you've got a service that is better than it is, that it's something the public wants. It's not necessarily so. You have to know these things. And you have to be cold and hard and objective. Here's the parallel I'll make to a fantasy football team. I happen to be, more than anything else in that league, I'm a fan of the New York Giants. But I don't build my team or my fantasy football season around having New York Giants on my team. If I happen to have one, so be it. If it's the best available option, so be it. I'm certainly not a fan of the Philadelphia Eagles. It doesn't mean I don't want to have their players on my team, because that's how I'm going to win. You have to be objective enough to know what is actually working and what is not.
And it's hard because when you're in the midst of it, it's very difficult. And
it goes back
to the zero based thinking exercise that Brian Tracy has, where, you know what, if you had to burn your business down and rebuild it, what would it look like?
And I think, by the way, I think that's an excellent quarterly exercise. And again, I'll draw another comparison to fantasy football. Every 3 games, you should do a cold, hard analysis of where your team stands.
So do you think that it's every quarter for a business person? Is that every 3 games, or is it every month, or
I think every month, I think you should sit down and really take a good look at what's working and what isn't. But I think the quarterly reviews are key. Because
I was going to say, so, okay, I like the quarterly reviews, but let's say you're in the coaching business and you have individual clients, and you're looking at overall the progress that they seem to be making. And do you think that it's a great idea to add that maybe on every 3 calls or every 6 calls, a little bit of a review, just to make sure that they're happy and they're viewing their progress?
I think I might say with coaching every 4 sessions.
Mm-hmm.
I like to do check-ins every four sessions to see where we are, to see if the clients are making the progress they want to. Now, each session is different, and the client gets to choose what those sessions look like.
Mm-hmm.
So in some cases, it can veer. But the goal is to make sure, whether it's an individual client or a small group coaching, that the progress is being made that needs to be made, and that feedback is critical, because you really can get into a lot of difficulty if it's not. And the other thing is, now that's the client piece. I also will say, from the coaching aspect, from businesses like ours, we owe it to ourselves as coaches and as business owners to review our clients and make sure that we have the kinds of clients that we want.
A la pumpkin plan.
That's part, yeah, that's part of it. But that's a critical thing. If you don't have good clients, and I'm a victim of this, if you don't have good clients, the business will sink. You can literally have your business just destroyed if you don't have the right kinds of clients.
So
If you're
what if you are in business and you're in let's just say you're in business and you just really, you don't have the right client mix, you don't have the right service mix, you don't have the right product mix, and you're sort of in that space where you're going, I'm not sure I want to do this. What's the best way to look at that when you're in the middle of it?
The first thing to do, I would suggest, is consult an outside party.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes a fresh set of eyes and ears is the best medicine. So yes, I am recommending, outside coaching. And incidentally, in Ann's case, you're looking at one of the best.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I echo that sentiment for you.
No, and the world doesn't know this, but you were my coach for many years. So that's how we know each other, and that has a lot to do with how I got into this. The thing is this:
And
if
you're
you
still
really,
cussing me to this day.
well, that's true.
That was a joke, everybody.
No, that's what they think. No, I'm kidding, of course. Kidding, of course. No, we had a good time, but you know what? But now think of, there were times, in all seriousness, where you challenged me to think about certain things, and I still remember when we first started. My goal was to train people on other people's material. And you asked me that very important question: what is stopping you from developing your own? And these are the kinds of objective, hard questions that sometimes you need to ask yourself as a business owner, and you may need someone else to help you do that. And you may need that extra set of eyes and ears. Now, by the way, for the record, that's money well spent. Because if you're in a business that you wind up hating, and you've got clients that you don't, all you're doing is throwing money and hours away. So I would look at it as almost as a reallocation of resources. And, believe it or not, it's perfectly okay to say, I don't like this client. I don't like this product, or this product could be redeveloped into something else. It really is okay to change your mind. And this is the other thing. You can't let ego or hubris run a business.
Oh, no, absolutely
You
not.
cannot do it. You can't be so stubborn that you go down with the ship. And think about this too. Okay, we all have competitors in business. There are thousands, tens of thousands of coaches. But it almost doesn't matter, because the only people we have to answer to in our businesses is ourselves. And our families, of course, but that goes without saying. But it doesn't matter what the next guy does or the next guy thinks. It matters every day. Your goal is to build your business into something that you can be proud of and that you enjoy. Warren Buffett wrote a book called Tap Dancing to Work Every Day. And ultimately, that's really the goal. You want to look forward to going into the office or coming onto a Zoom call. I love Thursdays. Thursdays is the day I work with my clients. I absolutely love it. I look forward to talking to them. And I didn't necessarily always say that. Certainly in my previous business.
Well, it's interesting because one of the things that I love about it is I love the stories that they tell. Some of them are magic, some of them are tragic, but
no, it's true. And the fun for me is to see how people get from point A to point B.
and you
And
never
the
know what that
and,
path is going to be.
and the thrill and joy of coaching is helping them get the biggest sense of accomplishment I get is to help them manage their time, manage their day, manage their business, and manage their mindset to the point where they see success faster. And that's my goal, is to help people become successful faster than they would be.
Well, what do you think are the largest impediments to success in business?
A lot of the time, it's the people who run them, meaning ourselves. And again, this is where mindset comes in. You have to have the right mindset to run a business. If you don't have the right mindset to run a business, you may as well stay in bed. And I mean that. If you don't have the correct mindset of, I want to be successful every day, I want to build this into something successful, I want to improve upon what I'm doing, then you really are better off working for someone else.
Punch that clock.
Yeah, you're much better off, because without the right mindset, you're doomed. Literally doomed. So I think the person in charge is one impediment. Look, we don't live in easy times financially either. The world economy is not in great shape. The United States economy is not in great shape. It's much harder now to get banks to lend money. That's an impediment. And the one thing you've really got to make sure of is that you have enough capital to work with to last you the amount of time you need to build your business.
Yes,
And that's a
working
big
capital
mistake.
kills a lot of business. The lack of
Exactly. And you know, lack of financing is a huge impediment. And I also think that truthfully, the people around you. I mean, how many stories of partnerships that we've heard have broken up where they were family or best friends or whatnot, and you wind up in court?
Yes, I've heard many of those stories, and it's very sad.
It's terribly sad. And you really, and again, this is why all these different things need to be spelled out before you begin. If you're working with a close friend, and as a rule, although I do work with a very close friend, but we began as business associates first. So we always worked well together. The friendship came after. But it was the time when I was the chair of the Disability Mentoring Day program. And she was my liaison to the mayor's office. That's how we got to know each other. Well, when I started the coaching business, she was no longer with the mayor's office, and she became my personal assistant. She was also the co-author of my first book. But before we finalized our deal, we had dinner together. And I said to her, I love you dearly. You're one of my best friends in this world. So if it comes down to it, if it's a choice between our working together and our keeping our friendship, I choose keeping our friendship.
Absolutely. That is the key.
If we see that it can't work, we terminate it. And if I see that it's starting to affect our relationship, it's going to be over quick.
Yes, I can speak from personal experience. I've lost friends in business.
You have to know these things before you start.
Absolutely.
And which, and again, much like fantasy football, lack of planning. Now, I'll give you an example with planning, and it also has to do with team building. When I build a team every year, in my draft, and this is planning, so it's relevant. There are certain philosophies I have that matter. Okay. I believe you can only win your league with 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. And I'll name them. They're Mahomes, they're Josh Allen from the Bills, Jalen Hurts from the Eagles, Joe Burrow from the Bengals, and Justin Herbert from the San Diego Chargers.
I don't hear Jameis Winston on that list.
And you won't hear Jameis Winston on that list. I know it kills you, but you're not going to ever hear me say that you're going to win your fantasy football league with Jameis Winston as quarterback.
Well, I am just crushed about that.
Yeah, I knew you would be, and I somehow knew this was going to come up as we talked. But he is starting today, by the way.
Oh, he is?
He is, because Derek Carr is injured. And by the way, for those playing today, it is Sunday. Check the injury news. Check the Sunday late injury reports, because if somebody's now, I'll give you an example. I've got an opponent today who has not checked his team because his star player is not playing today and he doesn't know it yet. And I hope he doesn't know it, because if I catch him sleeping, I've got an easy win today. But what I'm getting to is that you have to have the quarterback in place to win. That's planning. You have to know that going in. I am also a big disciple, and this is where my philosophy differs from most conventional wisdom. And we'll talk about conventional wisdom at some point. I believe very strongly in bringing in a cold weather kicker. I don't like kickers that kick in domes, because sooner or later in December, somebody's going to have to make a 50-yard kick in the Northeast with the wind blowing and the snow howling. And kickers, by the way, can cost you 5 to 10 points a game.
Oh, yes, that is true.
Okay. And the other thing is defenses. One of the things, first of all, I always keep two. I have one active, one on my bench. But I like to play matchups week to week with certain teams. So I'm not above playing the waiver wire every week to find that defense with the best matchup. Now, last week, I happen to have the Buffalo Bills. Love their matchup. They were one of the teams I drafted. Love their matchup with Washington. I got 32 points from them, which is a lot of points. It's 3 times as many points as you get when you start. In my league, you get 10 points every week to start. And keeping those 10 points is considered a good week. Okay? But now this week, for example, the New York Jets have that catastrophic injury to Aaron Rodgers. The Jets cannot score. Unfortunately for them, they're playing the Kansas City Chiefs tonight. So whose defense do you think I picked up this week? And I am starting the Kansas City Chiefs tonight against the Jets. This is what I mean by planning. All these things have to be mapped out. Now, by the way, that doesn't mean plans can't change. It doesn't mean you shouldn't be flexible in your planning, because, and again, this is an unfortunate part of fantasy. If injuries happen, like Aaron Rodgers, and I will tell you that a mutual friend of ours, Ann, lost both his running backs the first 2 weeks.
Oh, that's not good.
Not at all. So there is a flight, the plans can change.
I hear Marshawn Lynch is out there on the market.
Yeah, he's out there on the market, but I wouldn't want him starting on my backfield.
Why? He's great.
He was. Again, and this is also part of studying offense. And also remember, the one thing I told our mutual friend is the running backs have been de-emphasized. Now, most leagues still insist that you start 2 running backs a week. I would like to see that rule changed, because now it's really about quarterbacks and receivers, and also you can get a lot of points if you have the right tight end.
So in your business, you're the quarterback.
Right.
You've got to have your team.
Well, no. in your business, you're both the owner and the coach.
Well, it's kind of, well, you're also the quarterback in a lot of, if you're a solo, you're the quarterback.
If you're a solo, you're everything. And
Yep,
and that is, and again, this is a very important thing to emphasize. Even if you're the only person in your business on a daily basis, you still have to have that team around you.
absolutely. You have to have your accountant. You have to have your lawyer. You have to, and you know, there are different ways to do that because for instance, one of the things that I highly recommend is Legal Shield for people that are in small business, because you don't necessarily have the finances to have, you're not going to have a lawyer on staff, but you can, for 300, I think it's like $360 a year, you can pick up the phone and contact one if you need one. And it works out very well for small business. But these are kind of the contingency things you need to have in your place. So no, you don't have a lawyer on your team, but you have that resource. Maybe you don't like to do the bookkeeping, so you hire a bookkeeper, or
Absolutely.
have to.
And
So
again, you know, the you mentioned Legal Shield. There's also Legal Zoom,
could do that
and
too.
they have the file. You know, they do the filings with whichever state you're in, etc. Things of that nature. There are more options than ever. But the key is planning. You have to think everything through. And I think part of the problem is people react without thinking things through. And I think that can become very, very dangerous.
Well, yes, it does become very dangerous, because sometimes you might be entering into a situation and you think that would never happen. The worst would never happen with that situation. And then when 2 years later, you're standing in that situation and the worst has happened. Now, what the heck do you do?
Exactly. And because then you're spending resources where you don't need to be.
Exactly.
You're spending your resources to dig out of that situation.
And the other thing I think that's really very important is something that you touched on earlier with time management. And that is, you might say, oh, I can handle this. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. Sometimes you don't really have the time. And if you're not allocating that correctly, that can put a big strain on your business and you.
Right. Now, prime example is the week I'm about to have, because I'm about to move into a new home. My
Congratulations.
business, thank you very much. I've been waiting for this for weeks. So, but anyway, the point is I got it, but I have to reallocate my time resources this week because there are certain things that must be done in a very specific time period. So how am I going to get everything done? Now, tomorrow, in a sense, is all about the new place. So, with one exception, with one phone call, everything tomorrow is not about the business. So, okay, what am I going to do this week to keep the business moving forward? Knowing that I also have a series of doctor's appointments on Wednesday, knowing that Thursday is my client day, that's my coaching day. Those appointments are not moved.
Right.
So basically, my 5-day business week is now a 3-day business week. Now, I will tell on non-fall football Sundays, I've been known to work on weekends. I don't work on weekends in the fall, but I've been known to take an extra day here or there. But how am I going to use the 3 days that I have this week? And really, it's 2 days, because Monday is off. You know, as I said, with one phone call. Wednesday is off because of the doctors. Thursday is the client day. So I have Tuesday and Friday to work on my business. How am I going to get everything done?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I keep a weekly schedule. And I'm also old enough and old fashioned enough where I still like one of these books that you put on your desk where your schedule sits there in front of you. but I also carry something with me. This way, I use the Google Calendar. What time is this? What time is that? And the other thing is, and I do this for a reason. In a week like this, if there's something that has to be moved, you move it. And this is a big part of time management. I'll briefly go into what I call my 4-column exercise, and it's a $1 offer that I have. If you want to download it at jtdcoaching.com, you make 4 columns: column A, column B, column C, and column D. Column A are the things that you and only you, as the business owner or CEO, can do. Therefore, those must be done. Column B are things that are very important that you'd like to be able to do as the CEO, but it might be smarter for time interest to delegate it to someone else who you trust, who you know will get the job done effectively. Column C are tasks that you'd like to do, but are not necessarily critical. These are the kinds of tasks, as I said, that if I find them on my calendar this week, these are the ones that are going to be postponed. Anything I see that I would put in my own column C is gone this week.
Mm-hmm.
And column D, of course, are things you shouldn't be doing at all.
There you go. There you go.
Or actually, someone else should absolutely be doing them. And then you could also do a column E of things that you don't need to be doing, period. And again, here is a trap people fall into: checking email too often, responding to texts. We talked about this ourselves, but how much actual work gets done in a typical 8-hour workday? Studies show that 3 hours of actual work get done in an 8-hour workday. So think about how productive you can be if you're able to gain 1 to 2 of those hours back per week.
Mm-hmm.
That's 10 hours a week. That's another full business day of productivity for your business.
Absolutely. When you're sitting and working on a project and you're being interrupted constantly with texts and phone calls, not a good way to work. You have to have specific times where you look at your phone or your texts, and you may or may not respond to them immediately, but you can't be looking at them all the time. It's too distracting.
And each of these devices have a do not disturb button on them.
Yep.
I highly suggest you use them. And I also highly suggest using them when you've got a deadline, or you have work to do. What I will usually do, and this is just me, but I recommend this as well. I will schedule myself to put my do not disturb on at a certain time. I will reach out to the people that would need to reach me for anything critical beforehand and tell them I'm on do not disturb, let's say from 11 to 2. So unless it's absolutely, I'll get the message, but you're not going to hear from me. Is there anything before I get started that absolutely needs my attention? Otherwise, I'm out and I'm in what I need to be doing.
Excellent. Yes, I totally agree. I do have a news flash though. Are you ready?
Go.
No is not a 4-letter word.
Very true. You cannot be all things to all people.
No.
And this is why you turn down trades in fantasy football.
Or trades in your stock account.
Absolutely true. Absolutely. The one thing is this: business is not about friendship. Now, I'm in no way am I suggesting going out of your way to do someone harm or cheat someone or do something unethical or illegal. That's disgusting. But you've also got to realize that the person you're doing business with is looking out for himself or herself, not you.
It's the whiffum factor. What's in it for me?
Absolutely.
And you have to be very happy being the person to serve them in that, for that. You're there to be of service.
That's very true. But again, I have no problem anymore turning down clients that I don't want.
And I think that that is a very big, I think that's a very big problem for a lot of business owners, especially when, you know, you're new in business and you're trying to, you know, you're trying to build your business and you're looking at your account and you're going, uh-oh, I have to pay the rent. Do I take this client or do I pay the rent? Do I not pay the rent? If I don't,
No, and I will tell you that when
tough choices.
you know, in my previous business, this became an issue, and there was enough money that was low hanging fruit where it made sense. Where if I took these clients, there would be enough money to pay the rent, keep my now former wife and me comfortable, and well, as it turns out, it's the worst mistake I could have made because it literally destroyed my business, destroyed my life, destroyed my marriage. These are the
Taking the
sorts of,
wrong clients.
well, that's exactly it. If you're not taking on it, I don't care how much they want to pay you. If this is the wrong, if everything in you screams, this is not who I want to work with, I don't care what they're paying you, move on from them. And a friend of mine who I know from Jack Canfield, he was one of Canfield's instructors during the certification for train the trainer.
Mm-hmm.
This guy just turned down $1 million because he didn't want to work with the guy that wanted to give him the $1 million. He said, I thankfully have enough where I can turn it down. He said, it certainly would help. He said, but if I deal with this person, he told this to me. He said, if I deal with this person, I'm going to wind up in the hospital.
See, it's not worth it. There are some times when it's just not worth it.
No. And you know, you as the business owner have to know what does work and what doesn't. Now,
So
by the way,
what I'll let you go, and then I've got another question for you.
okay, no, what I was getting at is this. Everybody would love to have Patrick Mahomes on their team. But if it costs you 5 players that are going to weaken every other part of your team, is it worth bringing in that star? You don't want to rob from your strengths to support your weaknesses.
Well, and that's a key, you know, and that goes along with the big contract. Okay, so you get this big contract, but you can't serve anybody else. You have to make the decision whether that makes sense for your business. Because if you lose that big contract, you in essence lose your business.
Right. And again,
potentially.
This also falls back into the planning discussion. All of these scenarios are things that need to be discussed beforehand, before that contract is signed.
Yep. Well, and here's another. So we talked about a couple of the red flags: the intuition red flag, the big contract red flag. What other red flags do you think there are when you're looking at a potential contract relationship or client relationship? What would be another red flag for you where you'd go, this isn't going to work?
I've got a couple.
Okay.
I'll mention the two that come to mind because we talked about the first one. But I have a rule. I must like the client. I must believe in their mission. And they must be able to pay. Someone who immediately wants to start, I mean, again, and I have no problem with payment plans. But somebody who's immediately pleading poverty before you begin, that's a flag. When I hear someone say, can we try it for 6 weeks and then I'll pay you at the end of 6 weeks? Absolutely not.
No.
And by the way, a very good friend of mine, oddly, the guy whose fantasy football team I took over all those years ago, recently he wants to enter a coaching relationship because he needs my help with something. He said, so can we do a trial basis for a month? I said, no. I said, we'll certainly give you a certain family rate, so to speak, but payment is required up front.
Absolutely.
And I don't care if it's your best friend in the world. He is not, but I don't care if it is your best friend in the world. These are the kinds of things that have to be taken care of up front.
Well, and I
Because
think it's
you can't starve while he is.
well, that's exactly it. You know, what people have to understand is that this is your business, and this is how you survive. So
Right.
you can't be giving everything away when you can't eat.
Exactly the case.
Yeah. So
Other
very key, good point.
if I don't like the client and I don't believe in what they're trying to do. Or the other thing I look for is whether or not I mean, mine is a coaching business, so is yours. But I wonder if you haven't had this issue too. Do they really want to be coached?
That's a very good, yes, I have had that issue. And I also have had the issue where it's unrealistic. They might be amenable to being coached, but their expectations about the coaching are unrealistic.
Well, and not only that, there are two things that I see in these situations. They do want to be coached, but at the same time, they're not going to implement, which means it's a waste of everybody's time. Or the other thing that I look for, and I have seen this, is you're the coach, but they want you to do the implementation for them.
Yes, yes, I've had a lot of that. I've had a lot of that. Well, wait, you said you would help me with LinkedIn. Aren't you going to do my whole campaign? That's not what a coach does.
No, not at all.
Unless you're a LinkedIn coach.
Right. And by the way, and I remember this because I filled out when I started with you, there was a form I filled out. And I have a form that's similar now. Because the expectations need to be put on the table before the relationship begins.
Yes. Well, gosh, Eric. So, when is the new program starting?
The program is starting this week. We're going to open our doors on Tuesday, and we have small groups. We have only 48 spots available. We're doing 4 groups of 12. Anybody who would like to sign up for it is welcome to. We're going to start right away. We're going to do Wednesday sessions because Wednesday is one of the off days. So we're going to, and also we're going to do 2 Tuesday groups and 2 Wednesday groups. Because those are the 2 days, because the scores are final by then, and you also have to begin planning. So it's the perfect time to draw the parallels between fantasy football and also to give a good evaluation of how your own week is going in your business.
Excellent.
And we're going to do a little of both, but we're going to use the 2 off days, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, depending on which group you choose. Those are the days we're going to give these courses.
Perfect. Perfect. And I will be putting the link below this video, so you'll be able to get it from that link. And if you have questions, you can reach out to either me or you can reach out to Eric
at jtdcoaching.com
and pilotfishstrategist.com.
Absolutely right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Eric. I think we're going to plan our next one, and we'll be covering more about what you should be doing when you're the CEO and you want to run your business.
Absolutely true. Look forward to it. And thank you for having me on. It was delightful as always.
Oh, thank you for joining me. It's always fun.